Venice International Film Festival. I'm with Chris Pine, Harry Styles, a protagonist of Don't Worry Darling, screening here at the competition. Welcome.
Piacere, grazie mille.
A very victory welcome to you.
A very victory welcome to you.
So, the thing I thought is that for centuries, men have been told that they were the providers. They have to take care of women and children, you know, take food home or money home. Do you think that in this way, both your characters are victims, still victims of this pressure that we still have today, in a way?
I mean, I think it's I think in the story it's hard to look at these men who've, you know, behaved in a certain way and say, you know, we should all feel really bad for them. But I think in society in general, I think, you know, it's probably more obvious now and probably more talked about now. Still not as much as it should be, but I think obviously like mental health around, you know, for everyone, but, you know, the kind of suicide rates and stuff in males is higher, right? So I think there's obviously, I think there is a pressure that a lot of men feel about not having feelings or opening up about feelings or feeling like they're supposed to have feelings or all of those kind of complexities around that stuff. I read The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, which I thought was like the best kind of explanation of like the history of kind of toxic masculinity and male rage and all of those things, which I think reading that after doing the film, I think there's, you know, a lot of kind of things that kind of correlate, for sure.
Chris, what do you think about your character? Do you think that is also a victim in a way of this pressure?
No, I don't. I definitely don't think Frank is a victim at all. I think he's, you know, probably a sociopath or definitely a sociopath. But more to your point, yeah, I think there's an issue when shoulds get involved. One should be X or one should be Y. A woman should be this. A man should be that. I think the constriction that puts on a human being who's so much more than their gender or sex is ridiculous and unnecessarily confining. And certainly I think it seems like the movement that we're getting to in our era is one to move outside of those should boundaries. I think, but what I've said before about it, and I think it's true, is that this idea that Frank brings up between chaos and structure, which he completely exploits to his own advantage, is a very, very, it's a very specific argument that he's made, channeling a fear that we all have, and the fear is being alive. And when you're alive, being alive is naturally chaotic, and we as human beings have done everything we humanly can to make it look like there's structure everywhere. And unfortunately, if you just peer underneath it, it's actually just teeming chaos. So that, I think, is something that's worthwhile to look at, and is actually a benefit of what Frank talks about. The rest is a bunch of hogwash.
That was a much better answer than my answer.
Not at all. Not at all.
I like both answers. When I came out of the screening this morning, a colleague said, "Oh, this is a feminine manifesto, a feminist manifesto." Sorry. Do you think so? Do you think that this is also a feminist manifesto?
I mean, I think when you start banning about terms like feminist, we just would have to define what you mean by, like, what do you mean by feminist? So I would say that, and I'm not, those are just big terms that I don't want to bandy about in. I'd say it's certainly a story about empowerment, and it's certainly a story about power, and it's certainly a story about those with power and those without power, and it's certainly about lying about parity or equality or lying about happiness. So I don't know if I would say it's a feminist manifesto, but I certainly say that it communicates a sense of deep anger and deep frustration and deep disquiet amongst a certain part of the population that is hopefully getting a good venting and a good catharsis with Olivia's film.
What do you think, Harry?
Yeah, I think I think the themes of the kind of like gender roles of the kind of time in which the film feels to be set, I think is a very kind of it feels very like traditional kind of misogynistic time. I think it's incredibly relevant today. Obviously everything that's happening with kind of women having their rights over their own bodies taken away. So it's kind of it's a scary point to kind of realize just how not kind of vintage that is, even if you're looking at all these vintage cars and vintage clothes and vintage architecture and stuff. A lot of the themes I think are incredibly relevant now. I think what's so amazing about the film is that it's not, I don't think the intention of the film is to be really entertaining, and I think it's a really entertaining film. I think it's, my favorite thing about the movie is like it feels like a movie. It feels like a real go to the theater film movie that you kind of the reason why you go to watch something on the big screen. I think if you can go away and think about have something to think about afterwards, I think art, if it moves you, whether it upsets you or makes you feel happy or makes you feel powerful or makes you think, is what art's for. I don't think you have to feel really comfortable through a film to think that it's a really great film. I think sometimes the best films are the ones that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable.
I totally agree with you. Thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
you so
Good
much.
luck
Grazie
with
di
Don't Worry
tutti.
Darling.
Thank you.
Chris Pine, Harry Styles.
Thank you.
Venice 79,
Ciao.
Chiara Nicoletti for the Festival Insider. Ciao.
Grazie.